I would say one of the biggest shifts, and I think we see this a lot in the leaders we work with, is definitely a cultural shift from top-down hierarchical leadership to more collaborative, more team-based, really investing in people. And I even think we're seeing this emerging generation is beyond collaborative. They're more like co-creators, is what the research says. So, when I was first getting going, it was like, who can follow the rules and deliver on expectations? Then it was, who can bring solutions to the table? And now it's like, how can we create something new and innovative?
What if you were able to sit down for lunch with some of the greatest leaders in the world? What would you ask? What would they say? Welcome to the Linch with a Leader podcast, where you're invited to join us in learning the spiritual principles behind big success. Here's your host, Mike Linch.
As a leader, you're going to walk through different seasons of life and leadership. You will be a leader in each one of those, but the way you lead will change, and it will demand to be changed. And that's what we're going to talk about today in this episode of Linch with a Leader. If I've never met you before, my name is Mike, and it is an honor to welcome you into this leadership journey as we're all seeking to be the leaders that we were created to be in the spaces and places that God has put us. Well, welcome to episode 252. Today, we get to sit down with a leader who's lived through some different seasons and some different changes and some different struggles, but yet keeps coming out on top. Her name is Kadi Cole. I met Kadi a few years ago. I think we determined she was back on in 2021 and was one of my favorite episodes because I remember it so vividly. We talked about empowering female leaders, and there were some things about our conversation that really challenged me to step out into some areas in leadership. And I was so excited to get Kadi back on because there is so much of what I wanted to unpack with her. Her and her company live in this leadership space, working with leaders of all shapes and sizes. She has served in the church ministry world. She's served in the executive world, in the business community, and Kadi brings so much to the table. I'm telling you, I am learning. I'm in a brand new season of life now, and I'm learning how leadership is adapting and changing even in this brand new season that I'm in. So maybe this conversation was more personal than it is corporate, but I think it's something you're going to glean a lot out of. I know when I get off a call, there's just sometimes you go, man, that landed. This one landed. So I don't know where you're listening from today, but I want you to do me a favor. I want you to pull up a chair and I want you to listen in to my conversation with the great leader, Kadi Cole. Hope you enjoyed, everybody. Well, Kadi, thank you so much for joining me again on Linch with a Leader. It's so good to have you back.
Thank you, Mike. It's always an honor to hang out with you, and I'm really excited to be here for today's conversation.
It was such a blessing to meet you live and in person last year. And I was looking back, you were on in 2021. A lot of water's gone under the bridge since 2021, hasn't it?
It feels like a new world, doesn't it?
It really does. You've lived, Kadi, through a lot of different seasons of leadership. You look back at your journey. You've been in the game of leadership a long time. What has changed about leadership from when you've started, just generally? And what's still the same about leadership, looking back now?
Well, gosh, I've been leading since my, probably teenage years. So, and really studying leadership in my early 20s is probably when my church started introducing me to people like John Maxwell and leadership conferences and training and development. So it's been a good 30-year run, at least for me. And I would say one of the biggest shifts, and I think we see this a lot in the leaders we work with, is definitely a cultural shift from top-down hierarchical leadership to more collaborative, more team-based, really investing in people. And I even think we're seeing this emerging generation is beyond collaborative. They're more like co-creators, is what the research says. So, when I was first getting going, it was like, who can follow the rules and deliver on expectations?
That's right.
Then it was, who can bring solutions to the table? people. And now it's like, how can we create something new and innovative together?
Mm.
And those are three different sets of tools. And for those of us who've been around a while, it can be hard to, change the rules a little bit. But it's an exciting time also because of what that means for the next generation.
So there's people listening to this call today that are the older leader, right? They've sort of evolved like you have through these generations. Is it hard for them to go into what the younger generation needs as they're leading them, and that generation ultimately will be taken over to be co-creators? Are you finding leaders that you work with, maybe some that are like me and they've been in the game a little bit? Do you find them struggling to get to adapt to this new world?
Mhm. Well, change is hard for everybody unless we're in charge of it. I always say I like change that I'm in control of, but any other change I don't really like. So
Valid. It's true.
the rules are shifting on us, and it is hard to change. It is hard, especially as you get older. I think you just want to be good at it. Leadership is one of those things that I think when we really stay engaged in it, we really don't get good at it. It's kind of like the Christian life. It's like
Yep.
we know we're better than we used to be, but there's still so much more. In fact, the closer you walk with Jesus, the more you know you're away from who he actually is and what he wants for us. Leadership is the same way. As soon as we sort of hit a level, it feels like we should be able to kick back and go on automatic, but that's actually the time we need to lean in, and we realize how little we know about leading people, motivating people, connecting with people outside of who we are, what's natural and easy for us, how easy it is to insulate ourselves. And so I think if our mindset is we'll arrive and it will get easier, change is going to be really hard. If we train ourselves to remember this is the journey, we're discovering it together, it's part of actually God using his giftedness in us to sanctify us. Those things are always going to be stretching, and that's actually the gift of it. But we have to look at it as a positive, not as something to fight against or overcome.
Have you found, even leading your own organization, that you've had to walk through this? What's been the hardest part for you? Even leading your own team in your own organization, what have you had to change the most through the years?
The challenging thing for me is it's always a constant decision of what to delegate and what to keep. And that is true for every leader. And in every season, I think you have to reevaluate that. But also the ingredients of the decision change. So sometimes it's because I run a business now. So what does my business need the most leadership oxygen given to? And what doesn't need as much attention? What can kind of like sit where it's at and be okay? And then who do I have on the team? Because sometimes I have someone that actually it needs more leadership oxygen, but this person is perfect to take it. I don't actually have to invest more in that, even though we're going to be investing in it through someone else. But sometimes it's the thing I don't want to do, but there's no one else on the team who will care about it as much as I do or has the skill sets, or it's new. And so I need to own it because I'm the leader and I'm the only one who can innovate it and figure it out for what I want it to be. So because you need both the right amount of focus and the right person, it changes depending on the season you're in. And learning new skills, like we just said, it's hard. The longer you go, you can get kind of like learning fatigue. And so staying sharp, I think really the antidote to that I found in my life is I have to make sure I'm replenishing enough to be up for learning something new. I have to be refilling in order to be able to tackle the new thing. When I get run down and tired, I delegate out of exhaustion, not out of good direction or development for the person. And then, of course, it never goes well and I'm irritated with people. So I always know when I'm irritated with people, that's a me thing, not a them thing. And I have to kind of back up to where that went wrong.
So what replenishes you? So the check engine light comes on for Katie and you're like, all right, I'm getting irritated with people over stuff that is just not, and every leader knows that feeling. You walk in the office and you're just agitated about something that just doesn't matter, but you're agitated. What do you do? Because everybody's different. What do you do that replenishes your soul so you can be that leader that God created you to be?
Yeah, at my core, I'm actually an introvert. And so quiet time by myself, out in nature where I can pray and think and be with the Lord is like my strongest go-to. Being with key family, like being with my son, or I have 2 grandkids now, being with my husband, has been like just the core people that bring joy and sort of give bigger perspective to the stresses I'm feeling at work. Those are probably my two biggest ones. And I would say I need frequent doses of both of those to stay in a good place.
I bet
And
you do.
I'm in a job where I talk a lot and I connect with a lot of people, and a lot of people assume I'm an extrovert, but that rebound time is really critical for me. And even like at conferences or when I bring clients to my studio to do life plan work, I have to be really careful. Like, we're done at 6. I don't go to the after party. I cut relational corners in those places so that I can show up and be fully present when I need to most.
That's a good word. That's a good word. And it's amazing how many people present an exterior front that are not extroverted people.
Mm-hmm.
And you see it. I mean, if you can spend time with them, you see them you see those lights dim down quick the minute they walk away, and they pull back and they pull aside. And the great part is there's not a right or wrong. There's not a right or wrong.
Yeah. And I think in ministry, we go into ministry because we love people.
That's right.
I want to connect with them. I want to hear their story. I want to give my perspective that would be helpful. And there's a lot of pressure in ministry to be a people person. And I would say it's even increased as a female leader. The expectation of conversation. I work with a lot of men. I work almost exclusively with male leaders. And there is also an expectation I not only have energy and relational capacity for my relationship with them, but also with their wives. And so that's like double duty. So all of those pieces kind of play into it. And I think if we're not careful and really measure it and measure ourselves and trust how God wired us, we can feel guilty or push ourselves to be generous in ways we really don't have any extra to be generous with.
So you walk in, and I know you work with churches, you work with businesses, you work all across the platforms with solo individuals, you work with teams, you do it all. You know how good Kadi is because I go back and look at who all you've talked to, and you talk to the best podcast people out there because everybody cares what you think. And they really do. They know you've got a pulse on where leaders are, where teams are, where churches are. Talk to a leader real quick. How important is a leader's soul health while they're trying to lead, whether it's a business or a church? It doesn't really matter. How important is the who that they are to the team that they lead? What would you say?
Well, that's such a great point. Well, it's critical because we all lead from the inside out. And so if the inside is getting tired, if the inside is getting empty, if the inside is feeling wounded, those things will come out of the mouth. The heart speaks. And I think part of what's challenging is it's not always easy to know what's going on inside. You have a spiritual soul piece, you have emotions and kind of your heart piece, you have physical, you have mental. Those four, right? Heart, mind, soul, strength. Like those things are integrated and they feed on each other. They're not solo pieces. And so when one goes down, it affects the other three. If they're all four strong, we're at our best. But just like we were mentioning earlier, one of the reasons we have to stay in tune with that is not so much that you can't make a good decision or get through your workday. It's that we're not bringing our best. It's the little responses. It's the unwillingness to learn something new. It's the irritation with a staff member because we're tired, we're disconnected from God, where our emotions are running out of whack. Mentally, I'm not focused. I didn't get enough sleep last night. Any of those things can really throw off our leadership and how we interact with people. That affects trust. That affects then our ability to execute. Good. And so everything gets wrapped up in that. And people go up and down. So not everyone hits it every day, but we have to be tracking it enough on a daily basis that we know where we're trending. Am I trending down? And what do I need to do to move that back up? Or am I hitting strong and I'm going, well, now's the time to probably go for something and know the season I'm in, know where I'm at, and know what I need to turn things from going down to going up.
That's really good because great companies can turn bad quickly.
Yes.
Great churches can turn bad quickly.
Great relationships can turn bad quickly.
That's right. That's right. And what is usually the beginning of the slide? As you walk in and they've hired you for a reason. You've walked in, the board of directors came to you and said, "Okay, we need your help. There's something not right." And you look at the culture trend and the economic trend, and it's going down. It was up, now it's down. What are some key things that begin that slide that leaders should be on the lookout for?
Yeah, I think particularly in ministry, I think when there is trust, we talk about trust a lot in teams. You do a lot also. And so obviously when trust is breaking down, that's sort of the beginning of the end for the ability to do something together as a team or as a partner or any of those things, or as a leader. But I think the type of trust that breaks down changes depending on the culture or the situation. And so in a church, I see the biggest, most alarming breakdown is when I don't trust that you're listening to God anymore. And it's not even so much my relationship with you. It's that when you give a decision that I don't agree with, or you respond to me in a way that's hurtful to me, if I trust that you hear from God, that if that was wrong, you're going to be convicted of it, that we're both on the same spiritual page, then I have a lot of grace for being human in that. And part of the reasons I know you're listening to God is that if you're really hurtful to me or you respond bad to me, God convicts you and you come back and fix it. You apologize, you admit it. But if that happens over and over again and you never are aware of it and God never convicts you of it and it's something really hurtful to me, and I got a Matthew 18 you, like, and especially if you don't respond well to it, it's not so much that our relationship is broken down. It's that I'm now following someone who's not listening to God. And that we give up a lot in ministry to be in what God is doing. And so if my leaders aren't listening to God and I gave up salary, I'm sacrificing my family, I'm all in every day, I'm leveraging everything I have for the mission, but we're not following God, my engagement drops quickly, my distrust grows immensely, and then I'm faced with what do I do with that? This is a lot of reasons why we see burnout is people are trying to compensate for a leader they don't think is listening to the Lord. So even as a leader, I got to make sure I'm clarifying that with people and owning those things in interpersonal ways as much as I want to cast a great vision, manage the budget right, have a great sermon series. Those are the ways people know they can trust me.
What do you tell a teammate that they come to you, you're doing they're maybe doing 360s or you're just meeting with the team and you get that? You probably pick up on it pretty quick. What do you tell that person to do in their situation? And I know they're all different, but in generality, in their situation, and what do you tell the leader about what you've heard?
Well, my role when I'm coming in to consult is to try and help the people resolve their own issues. So part of what I'm doing for the person who's lost trust is, first of all, usually the conversation is about, I don't agree with what they're doing. But when you really start going, it's not really about the decisions you're making. It's that it's not about, are they right? It's, do I trust? And and if I don't trust, what is it that's made my trust break down? And how can I go to that person and ask about it? Like, hey, I noticed this and this and this. Tell me what's going on. Or I believe we're both on the same page. Or I came here thinking we were working on this, but I've seen you make these 3 decisions. Or these 2 interactions were very hurtful to me. Help me understand why you were doing that. It's always a question, right? When we're really confronting someone, we're trying to understand, did I misinterpret this? Are you on the right page? And then how that person responds tells us a lot. So getting to the heart of the issue and making sure we're having a conversation about the right thing versus the symptom of the thing. And then a lot of times I'll just try to really connect with leaders and talk about, where are you actually at in your heart? Where are you in your soul? How's your physical health doing? How's your family life? How's your marriage? Like, what's going on in your other world than work that is that inside out stuff that might be coming out? And usually, especially if I have a good relationship with the person, that stuff is quick to come to the surface. Well, I haven't really had a quiet time in a long time. Or, I've got conflict at home every day with my wife. Our kid has special needs. They're a teenager. We can't figure out how to navigate it. I just avoid going home. She's exhausted all the time. There's something behind the thing. But leaders rarely have people to help and support, and they don't, and oftentimes can't really talk to their team about it in an honest way. And so helping leaders recognize what they need, ask for what they need, and get what they need is a huge piece of moving a team and a leadership group forward.
That's so good. And, and I think about your evolution as a leader. You begin as a nurse, right?
True.
That was your
health nurse.
That is so crazy. You begin as a nurse, and then people begin to see something in you. People begin to tap you on the shoulder. Leadership opportunities begin to open. And then here we sit in 2025, and you are the same person that you were then, but you're not the same person that you were then. So if I could go back and we could pull back the curtains on Kadi when she was in her 20s, and this new leadership journey was brand new. What was leadership like to you in that season of your 20s? What were the things being developed in you during that season of life?
Yeah. Well, whenever you start out in leadership, it is that season of like, how do I actually deliver on what's been asked of me? It's high productivity. And for me, I just could not get enough of opportunity. I think if I could look back now
That's
at my
good.
20-year-old self, I would say, you're going to have a long life. There's going to be a lot of opportunities. This isn't your only shot. You do not actually have to say yes to every single thing in order to be a good steward of your gifting. So I probably would have paced myself a little more. But at the
That's
same
good.
time, you really are supposed to say yes to everything. It really is important to take your leadership legs out for a spin and see how fast they can go, how big a plate you actually have. What am I good at? What am I not good at? So I think I was probably just in experimental mode. I had
Mm.
no vision for myself. I did not think of myself as a leader. I really had a very limited view of myself, even in terms of having a career. I grew up in an environment that really being a wife and mom was elevated as the most godly thing to do. So even when I went into nursing, I was either biding my time till that happened, or I was going to be single my whole life and go overseas and be a missionary. Those
Mm.
were kind of the two routes I thought women had. And it turned out that that's not at all what I ended up doing, but my heart to serve God, my desire to be helpful to people, wanting to be useful in the kingdom, all of those things are still true. I just got to do them in very different ways than I ever imagined as a young person.
Who was the first person to see leadership in you? Who was the first significant leader that not only saw it, they spoke it? They took words and invested those words in you. Who was that for you at that age?
Yeah, so my mentor when I was in my 20s, her name was Jill. She was on staff as the singles pastor and the women's director, I think, something like that. Maybe director of women's and singles. She probably wasn't actually a pastor. I'm not sure at the time, but she saw leadership in me. She did things like brought me to leadership conferences, made me a small group leader. I ended up launching through her leadership a young 20s ministry and
Hmm.
invited all my people from work and the people at my apartment complex. Like it just seemed so normal. But she really talked to me that I was good at this, that
Mm.
people wanted to follow me. Now, when I look back now, I spent my high school and college years in all sorts of leadership roles. I went to leadership camps. I had all sorts of jobs. I was in leadership training programs, but I never had someone actually tell me I was actually a leader. I just thought I kind of snuck in and I
Yep.
was so excited to learn. But I really did not trust myself. And I would say probably till my mid 30s when I was building leadership programs, did I stop and go, I might actually be a leader also. Like it took a long time for me to really believe it and trust it. It just wasn't in my paradigm, even for myself.
So in your 30s, was that season the season that you finally began to see yourself as a leader and that you could make a difference in the kingdom?
Yeah, I knew I could help, and I totally loved filling leadership roles and thought of myself as the ability to fill a role, but I didn't think of myself as a leader without a formal job.
How
Because
about that?
there's
Yep.
there's gifting and anointing as a leader that's sort of outside the formal structure of a church or an organization. There's just who you operate in the world and in the kingdom as a kingdom ambassador. And then there's roles you fill. And for
Mm.
me, I spent way too long thinking that I needed a role in order to lead. Now, I believed it for other people. I told it to other people. It was hard for me to believe for myself that I actually was a kingdom leader, even if I didn't have a job and a title that said that.
That's good. You know, I think for so many of us, we do believe it is tied to that job or title. And the 30s are an interesting time because we're beginning to develop so much of who we are. And then we enter our 40s. What were your 40s? What
Mhm.
was that season of life like for you? And what did God do in your 40s that he didn't do in your 30s and 20s?
Yeah, for me, I think the 40s, which I would just say to translate to women who maybe haven't been working or leading fully, this is really at about year 15 to year 20. So even if you're getting started in your 40s, this
Yep.
might hit you more in your 50s and 60s, is that in your early years, you're trying to add and you're trying to explore and experiment what's possible. In your 40s, God really begins to prune down to the most important things. Usually in leadership, you've been elevated enough that you have to say no to things. You cannot say yes anymore. You have to learn to delegate. You have to learn how to multiply yourself, how to develop other leaders. But then you also have to really steward your calendar for a few different reasons. First of all, especially if you actually are literally in your 40s, your personal life and your work life begin to collide because your kids are old enough now. You don't just come home and have dinner and it's good. You're like going to ball games. You're traveling with the things. You're trying to create whatever. You're doing college visits. Like the demands of time, they don't go to bed at 8:30 anymore. You're like up till 11:30 at night with these teenagers. So the demands of parenting and kind of midlife. For me, all of my parents died while I was in my 40s, and so they were all very sick during that season. So I was caretaking a lot. I'm the firstborn, and firstborn with my husband's family too. So we were caretaking both directions, and I ended up losing our parents during that time. So a lot of adulting. And then my work was at its highest level. I had over 300 people reporting to me. I was leading a school of leadership. I was delegating at high levels. And when things go well, it's really beautiful. But when you delegate at high levels and things go bad, you're oftentimes one of the last people to find out. And it's under your purview. And so those were refining times and clarifying times of what are the things can I delegate? What are the things must I hold on to? What are the pieces that I will always lay my eyes on, no matter how much I trust someone, because they're the make or break of leading leaders. And that is a whole nother level. So time management, priority management, figuring out how to create the win-win. How do I do something that's a win for my family and a win for work and a win for me personally in my own refilling? And how do I strategically choose who gets what of me? Because I can't be at all places at all times.
Was that something you figured out quickly, or is that something that took years to figure out?
I feel like I had to figure it out quickly. My husband during that time had a lot of really serious illnesses. So he had been in a major accident and he had long-term effects, mental and physical effects of that. And so his capacity and his healthcare was a major part of my caretaking. And so I was forced into priority management very quickly, and it was big pieces. And we had a son that I was trying to raise and kind of shield him from some of those things. And so it was a fire situation for me. But I did find my way through it. And it was, deciding what doctor's appointments must I be at, what is okay for me not to be, what meetings must I be at, which ones am I going to send someone else to, what are the time zones that I must be at work, where can I cut corners and take my kid to the doctor? Like everything became a chess game of priorities. And it's exhausting, but it is doable. And it did provide for me a framework that allowed me to function for a really long time in a very high demand situation from a lot of directions.
Any regrets from that season? Any regrets when you were, I think of what Paul said when he said, I'm hard pressed on every side.
That's what it felt like.
That's what it sounds like. I'm getting crushed. I'm getting crushed here. Any regrets that you go, if I could go back, I probably would have done this a little bit different?
Mm-hmm. I think I probably I would have put myself as its own category. What are the strategic things that must go in about me? I was very clear on myself spiritually. I stayed very spiritually strong. I had an incredible connection with God during those years that I'm so grateful for. I got a lot of confidence in my ability to keep going in those press times, but my body did not get the same priority. Like I went to the doctor once a year, but I lived with things I didn't need to live with for a really long time. I found out now just a year ago, I actually lived in mold in my house all of those years. And my health was declining. I thought it was stress. I thought I wasn't managing myself well. But if I had made myself its own category and said, I deserve an hour on Google a week to check out my symptoms, just that would have probably made a huge difference for me physically in those. So it's not that I put myself last. I just didn't make myself as big of a priority as everything else.
Well, that's a really good word. And that's the that's the tension of a servant leader, right? Your job is making others be more important than you. And then there's seasons and there's times you've got to take care of you so you can take care of them, right?
Yes.
And a female leader wears a very different weight than even a guy. So unpack that. Maybe there's a man listening to this and they're going, well, I mean, we're all leaders, but what is a weight a female leader carries that maybe a guy doesn't have to carry quite like they do?
Well, there actually is pretty concrete research around this. It's called the double shift, and we see it for single women, married women, women with children. It looks different in each of those zones, but men usually go to work. In fact, I remember being on the executive leadership team. There were 3 of us on the team, and there was another man who oversaw all the ministries. I oversaw all of our campuses, and he came into my office one day and said, my life is going so amazing. He's in his mid-50s. His kids are launched. He's got grandkids. He's like, all I do is I work and I work out. And I just remember thinking, wow, that must be amazing. He's like, I come to work, I have a great work day, I go home, I work out, I go and then I have dinner with my wife who's made it all for him. His clothes are done for him, the house is clean for him. And I just thought we could not have more opposite lives.
Yeah.
And so for most women, we work a whole day in leadership and then we go home and do a second shift. That's why it's called the double shift. Then when you enter years where your parents start to age, they call it the triple shift. And then you've got parents that you're caring for, sometimes in town, sometimes across the country. And so just the mental load of that and thinking of those things through the day. You know, I left work multiple times because we forgot the costume for first grade, whatever happened that day, or the snack that needed to be for whatever. So just the amount, the mental load, the logistical load of carrying those things. Women, I should say, particularly moms, tend to carry it different than dads. Although I do want to give a shout out to the modern dad, especially in ministry, that I see stepping into parenting in really incredible ways to have more equality around co-laboring. But I do think most women think about it through the day when they're at work, and most men kind of segment it a little easier. And so that ability to focus and kind of code switch is pretty significant.
Well, I want to say thank you to you. You know, it's 2021 when we talked about developing female leaders, women in leadership. And I, honest to goodness, never had thought about it. And it wasn't I was anti, I just didn't think about it. Because I remember telling you, oh, I lead leadership groups. And you said, what are you doing for ladies? And I'm like, nothing. So, and you said, well, you should. And I'm like, you should. And I'm telling you, I remember Katie sitting in that room the very first day, and there's these 10 high octane movers and shakers that are sitting in there. And I tell them the story. I met a lady named Kadi Cole, and here's what she said to me. And I you know, what James says to the man who knows the right thing to do and he does not do it, to him it's a sin. I'm like, it's going to be a sin if I don't do something with this. So that's why you're here. And to listen to them talk, to listen to them go, yeah, I'm at work having to fire a guy that hired me 10 years ago, and now I'm his boss and I'm having to go let him go. And I called because my first grader didn't take their homework, you know, and I don't think about that.
Yeah.
My wife thought about that. I didn't think about it. And so I'm telling you, man, thank you for exposing me to it. And even for some people listening today, maybe a female's listening and you go, double shift, 100%. And to the guys who are listening that go, holy smokes, I'm like Mike, I never thought about it. Thank you for doing that. That's it's a really good word. And you didn't hit him, did you? When he said it, you didn't hit him. I know you wanted to. Okay, good. I just want to make sure.
Maybe imaginatively, but well, thank you for running those groups, because I think, you know, one of the things that women oftentimes get inadvertently left out are those informal networks where they get to meet with other leaders, particularly in ministry, because we're trying to be protective of gender boundaries, which I want us to be. But then it means you can't really text someone and ask them a question or ask for prayer for something around these kinds of things. And so creating spaces for women to meet each other, support one another, redefine what these terminologies mean for us as female leaders and the uniquenesses of our life and the season we're in. Those are just really important, and it's part of the way we help make more space for more women leaders.
So good. Now you're in a new season. What tell me about the season of leadership and life that you're walking through now? What are you learning? What are you having to unlearn? What are you having to relearn? I heard Sam Chan say this to me years ago. I said, what's the greatest thing you ever learned in leadership? And he said, Mike, you're always learning, unlearning, and relearning. So what are some things you're learning now? What are some things you're having to unlearn? And what are some things you're having to relearn?
Well, I would say I'm probably in another season of pruning. I started my company, I kind of transitioned off my church role, went to work for Leadership Network and started consulting and coaching. I wrote the book for female leaders, and then COVID hit. And so my world has been sort of expanding over the years. And just like when you're new in leadership, new in entrepreneurship has been a real stretch for me. I never imagined myself doing this. There's a lot to figure out about how to do it. And then your plate gets really full and you have to prune back. And so I've been in that pruning season, and I would say in all areas of my life. My favorite book, if anyone's in the same sort of season, is X is Easier Than 2X. Have you read that book, Mike?
No.
You are going to love it. It's not a Christian book. It's an entrepreneurial book. And the entrepreneurial world, I learned, has a really interesting take on, manifesting and stuff like that. But the concept that when you're trying to like double the size of your ministry or double the size of your business or just double the effectiveness of your life, that the work to take things from 1x to 2x, it's actually easier to go from 1x to 10x.
Wow.
It changes the way you think. It changes the kind of people you need in your life. It changes the way you think about learning and growing. It's higher risk, but it's higher reward. And so those mindset shifts for me, and especially COVID was a challenging time for me. I mentioned about losing my parents. We had a lot of family crisis during that time. Of course, my business shut down for quite a while. And I was just in a real like, Lord, I don't know what's next for me. I'm not sure where this is going to go. I had lots of options, and then it felt like I had no options at the same time. And that idea of thinking bigger and differently, but in a language that wasn't Christianese like I was used to, because I could kind of hack that system for myself.
Yep.
So it was really helpful to have an outside way of looking at the potential that God might want to do in me, through me, and opening that up to all areas of my life. What did he want me to do with my physical health? As I'm entering my 50s, it's a new season, especially for a woman. What do I want my health to look like? What is the community I'm building for myself at this time? What do I want my relationships with grown children to look like? What do I want my finances to look like? What's my real role in the kingdom in this next season? And I'll tell you, I was more surprised than anybody. I felt from the Lord on a spiritual sense. This is part of that. I don't need a role or a title. Even in my own local church, I'm not on staff. I'm heavily involved in my church. I'm passionate about local church. But that idea of stepping into this more of a older, wiser mentor and owning that. So similar, I think it was a challenge similar to the challenge to own leadership at all in my life was a little delayed. I've been more interested in adopting a mentoring. Please don't get freaked out by the word elder for anyone who's worried about that. But that biblical eldership of speaking with God's authority on things I know about or that I have expertise on or that I sense God wanting to say to me, to individuals, to groups of people, to things we're doing in my church, to what I see in the next generation coming up, knowing that I have something to share and feeling compelled to share it. Those are things that if I hadn't really given myself the freedom to reimagine my life from 50 to 70, what do I want that 20-year run to be like?
That's good.
And who do I want to be at 70 and look back? And what are God and I going to, what's he inviting me in to do with him over the next 20 years? I think I would have kind of stayed ho-hum. And so it's been a new level of moving up, but then also pruning to be even more specific. So you have this gift of teaching. What exactly are you going to do with this? You have this gift of administration. What exactly are you going to strategize in the kingdom? Like what is that actually going to be able to do? And what am I called? What are the doors God's opening for me to be able to talk about that and move forward in those things?
I heard, I think it was Bob Beal, the leadership guy, say our 50s are our stride years. He said the 40s are struggle and the 50s are stride. I had never heard anybody say that before. And there's a lot of truth to it. It's like you finally figure out who you are, how God made you. It took pruning to get you there. Man, you walk through the loss of parents. That's one of the hardest things you ever walk through in life. It is one. And I had a leadership guy tell me this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. He said, Mike, when I lost my mom and dad, I finally became the adult.
That is very true for me also.
Why do you think that's true? Why do you believe that's true?
Boy, I don't know. I think adulthood is an interesting thing in our culture. I don't think we create ceremony around it enough. We don't have a lot of rituals around it where we say like you are actually an adult. We don't have our expectations for adulting have lowered through the years, and adulting has become harder. And I would say it's probably been in my late 40s, 50s where I was like, I am actually an adult now. I didn't actually connect it with the loss of my parents. I thought it was maybe my son becoming an adult, but I probably was actually feeling like there wasn't anyone else to go to for a backup.
It was so weird. So I lost mine. I lost both of mine in 2017. And when he told me this, and it was after the podcast, so it was probably 2019, 2020, when he said that to me, he said, I was standing at my parents' grave and I thought, I finally know who I am. And I haven't needed them in years. It wasn't like I was living off them or living with them, but it's like a new mantle has been passed to you. So my final question of the day today is this. You've gone through pruning. You will go through pruning again. You have this new season of finding your stride. And I see a joy just in your life and in your heart. I just hear it coming through your voice. Even from running into you last year. I look at the lady I ran into last year at Trillith, and then even now I see this joy in you right now. What do you want this last leg of the journey? So 50 to when God says it's time, whenever that may be, 90, 80, whenever it is, what do you want to mark this season? What do you want to be the word that describes your life, your leadership, your family? What would you say?
Boy, that's a really powerful question. It actually makes me a little emotional to think about it because I do, and I think I say this partly because I'm feeling and resonating with those leaders who are out there who are in the dark time. I had a very, I'd probably a 15 to 20 year run of just real significant struggle as I led in ministry and feeling that pressed in peace. And I think my sort of vision for the future that I believe God's given me is kind of coming out of this, the need to abide in those spaces and moving into really abounding, this idea of like abounding in good works in so many different ways. But part of that is also telling the story that those hard seasons actually do come to an end. And for me, it was such an extended one, and it was so core with my primary family unit. And we haven't gotten into the details here. We could certainly do that another time, but I'll just leave it. There was a lot of suffering and a lot of challenges and a lot of hardship and a lot of trying to figure out where does God have me in that and how do I be faithful and obedient in things that feel very unorthodox and not the normal person's journey as a female leader, as someone in high levels of church and all of those spaces. And so when you find yourself in those spaces, I really did think this was my life's lot, that I would just be in this struggle till I died and my relief would be heaven. And I think I just want to encourage people that the desert does end, the valley does turn into a mountain, that no matter how long it's been or how long it might be, that there is an end to that season and that God will bring restoration if you follow him, if you stay obedient, if you know that at the end of the day, he is your real reward and you keep that at the forefront of your mind. He does honor and replenish and restore all of those things. And so because of that, I am in a new season in so many ways, but I do feel the joy of being able to tell that story and to encourage people in that, and then to see what God also might want to do in a season of abundance as well as struggle.
Thank you for listening to the Linch with a Leader podcast with your host, Mike Linch. If you enjoyed this episode, you can help more people hear it by subscribing and leaving a review wherever you may be listening. For full episode notes and more spiritual leadership resources, visit MikeLynch.com.